Join us September 25th, 26th, and 27th for a 3-day special streaming event, Strange Realities, to push the limits of your reality. Featuring authors, academics, researchers, occultists, experiencers, podcasters, and practitioners. All presenting fresh cutting-edge material and research.
Streaming live.
Featuring presentations by
Brent Rains,
editor of Alternate Perceptions magazine,
Aaron Goulias,
host of the Saucer Life podcast,
David Metcalf,
writer and researcher,
Alan Greenfield,
author of Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts,
Stephanie Quick,
writer and blogger,
Red Pill Junkie,
14 researcher and explorer,
Tim Banal,
host of Banal of America,
Guy Malone,
iconoclast and troublemaker,
Timothy Ritter,
host of Strange Familiars,
Kiki Dombrowski,
author and practitioner,
Greg Bishop,
author of Project Beta,
Jenny Ashford,
host of 13 O'Clock,
Recluse,
host of The Farm,
Jack Montgomery,
Folk Magic,
Joshua Cutchin,
author of Thieves in the Night,
Reverend Michael Carter,
Alien Contact Experiencer,
Dr. Future,
host of Future Point,
Tony Kale,
author of Memphis Hoodoo,
Rin Collier,
occultist,
Soraya Askath,
host of Where Did the Road Go, and John Tinney, Ghost Stalkers in Hell.
all 3 days, only $20. Tickets and info available at strangerealitiesconference.com. Brought to you by the Conspirinormal podcast. Conspirinormal.com. Strange Realities.
Well, it is great to have you back on the show. I mean, it's been since 2013.
Yeah,
2014. Yeah, I think something like that. And I think we've kind of like circled around each other since then. And we've already started. So I guess really to tell you the truth, Olaf, I really just kind of wanted to start just like what's been going on with you in the last 6 years. And we'll get into some other esoteric kind of subjects, but I kind of want to get an update on some of the secret space program stuff, if there is any. And we'll just kind of go from there. Just have a cool conversation.
In about 2014, I decided to kind of lay off a little bit and to go a bit underground and just do my stuff, do my research. Because you look at the range of conspiracy people or UFO people, 14 people, whatever. I'm not on the spectrum that is driven by writing books and making money. I do this because I like it, and I do this because it's an obsession, and it's my life. Yeah. And so I decided to really hunker down and to focus on my research. And so, that's what I did. I started to evolve and go in more of a Fortean direction. I've always believed that most of the UFOs that we see are human. I mean, I wrote a damn book about it. But I think most of what we see is human. And I started to focus on that. But the stuff that we don't see as human, it's like, what are we really dealing with here? Are we dealing with aliens? Coming from Zeta Reticuli, or, what's actually going on? And in the intervening time, a couple of years ago, there was a show that came out called Hellier. And at the time, between, say, 2014 and, say, 2018, right, most of what I did was just watching. Because 2014 to 2018 was a very interesting period of time. And so I was doing a lot of watching and thinking. And it's, as a conspiracy researcher, it's good to stop and watch and think, right? That you can't, because conspiracy theory in general is a reactive state. You can't really be proactive and be a conspiracy theorist. It is a purely reactive environment. So I'm watching and learning and watching because things were adapting. And I was trying to understand how they were adapting. But in around 2018, this show called Hellier came on. And, I resisted it because I thought it was about Paul Hellier. And I was like, I'm not watching anybody who could be the Minister of Defense in Canada and not know anything about UFOs or at least unidentified objects. He's lying or he's an idiot. I mean, it's one or the other. There's no in between here. So I'm really, I was really over the whole Paul Hellier thing. And I really just don't put a lot of stock and faith in it.
Interesting that you thought of it that way. That's interesting.
Yeah. And so my friends kept saying, you gotta watch the show Hellier. And I'm like, no. I'm really over it. I don't want to deal with it. Watching Paul Hellier cavort around and tell everybody he doesn't know anything, but this is his opinion, it doesn't really do it for me. And then one day, in 2019, a friend of mine named Taylor, and he's a big fan of your show. He's like, he calls me up. He's like, dude, you got to watch this show. I'm like, what show? He's like, you got to watch the show Hellier. And again, I went into the normal tirade. I said, no, I'm not watching Paul Hellier. I'm over it. And he, if he was the Minister of Defense of Canada and he didn't know about UFOs or at least unidentified objects penetrating their airspace, he's either an idiot or he's lying, right? And he's like, no, you dumbass. it's about Hellier, Kentucky. I'm like, oh, okay. It's like,
and you're like, where?
I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, it's about the Kentucky Goblin. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll watch it then. So, in the meantime, since way back, I had published a book written by Alan Greenfield called The Complete Cipher of the UFOnauts. And I actually published the Complete Cipher of the UFOnauts. I published the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts. And I published the Secret Rituals of Men in Black. Those two books were pushed together. Alan and I re-edited it to make the two books one, which was always his intent. And, it's a somewhat esoteric book, so it was never like a barn burner of a seller. I really sold it because I like Alan, and I liked what he did, and I'm very interested in the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis. And, I always was trying to make the damn cipher work, and, it's fascinating, so I just published it. And one day, and I think about 2018 actually, that the book started to sell a lot more. And Alan and I were perplexed. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm not doing anything. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Because as you guys are probably aware, buying advertising for esoteric subjects, books about esoteric subjects or podcasts or radio shows, videos, the advertising doesn't really do much. So, we don't really heavily advertise it. And then, my friend Taylor's like, you gotta watch the show. So I watched it. And in the first 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, that's the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts. I published that. And so I paused the thing on Amazon, and I called up Alan. Alan, I think I understand why you're selling more books now. And when I watched it, middle of last year, when I watched it, that's when stuff really came unglued. And that has completely changed everything. So
how do you think that it's changed everything? I mean, I kind of have my own ideas about it, but because it is a very interesting series, and of course, the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts figures pretty prominently in it.
Yes, it does. Well, how does it change everything for other people, or how does it change everything for me?
How does it change everything for you? And I guess we can work it to other people too.
I started to have the synchronicity.
Okay.
The number 93 started to follow me. I'm a big road tripper, right? Because I'm a 14, so I go seek stuff out. 2 weeks ago I was on Mount Shasta with my son and a friend of mine, and we were attempting to generate a CE5 event, which we were successful. So I went to Shasta for the weekend to try to see UFOs and Lemurians. So I'm constantly out trying to find stuff. And I started to see where I would go to a Best Western is my favorite. Because before COVID they had the best waffles ever. Because they have this waffle machine. Oh my God, the waffle machine's the best. Well, anyway, I would get room 333.
Okay.
Which is a 93.
Right.
I would buy gas, and my bill would be $93. I would get a lottery ticket, even though I know I'm not going to win. Every once in a while it's fun. I get a lottery ticket. I'd win $18 3 times. One night when it really started to get bad, one night I was sleeping, and my phone dialed a friend of mine in Canada who has a radio show. His name is Dave Scott, and I called his phone while I was sleeping. My phone called his phone at 3:33 in the morning 3 times, and he had quite an experience the third time when he picked it up, and that culminated in me and Greenfield getting on the phone with him and a remote viewer sensitive empath that he knew, and actually making contact with the I forget the exact term for it, but it's like the Inner Council, which is this group that sits below the Secret Chiefs of the Third Order. So the Secret Chiefs of the Third Order very rarely interface with people. So there's a group under them that is usually the interface. And so we actually talked to one of those people, and Alan was able to identify who we were talking to based on the description that the psychic gave him. So that's when it got really crazy, and it's just gotten crazier from there. I mean, I've found balloons. You know, you watch the show, right?
Oh yeah. I've watched the whole thing, both seasons.
I found balloons. The balloons were followed by interesting events. I was driving somewhere with a friend of mine. My friend saw the green man emerge out of a tree. And then the next day we found a secret altar to a secret chief in a metaphysical bookstore. I mean, it goes on and on. And it's culminated actually in me cracking the Enochian cipher. Well, I guess what I call euphemistically the Enochian cipher. And Greenfield and I are perplexed by it.
Mm-hmm.
When Alan Greenfield is perplexed by something, when Alan bleepity bleep bleep Greenfield is perplexed by
Yes.
that's when you have to step back and go, you know what? Something's going on. So since I cracked it, I've been trying to experiment with it and understand it and see where it goes. So that kind of brings you up to date.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can tell you that in my own life, it's not as much like the number 93, even though we did kind of have a weird experience with it. In my own life, I had like a lot of weird synchronicities, kind of even leading up to even like watching Hellier, and weird synchronicities that had to do with the Secret Cipher. And this is before I even watched Hellier. And I knew that the Secret Cipher had something to do with Hellier, but I wasn't quite sure until I watched it. See, I didn't watch the first season until the second season came out. Okay. Because I don't know whether it was just like I wasn't interested, or whether it was just like I didn't want to jump on the bandwagon, or what it was. But for some reason, I just didn't watch or just didn't have plain time. I didn't watch the first season till, I guess what it was, last November or December. So, but you know, with the 93 thing, we kind of had the weird synchronicity where we went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and we got sat on 2 different occasions, and we got sat at the table 93 twice, which I know you've seen that picture. So,
well, a couple of friends of mine, because once you get on the train, see the way that it was described to me is that you get on the train. And once you get on the train, it's Snowpiercer, baby. It doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. And you can't get off. Sometimes it'll slow down. Sometimes it'll speed up. But once you're on the train, it doesn't stop. And, you know, I had some friends, and they were interested in it, and I kind of explained to them what was going on. And they were having a barbecue, like just a family barbecue, right? And they went to the store and bought food. And the bill was $93.93. I was talking to Greenfield last night about the Enochian cipher and what all I'm doing with it, and, you know, suggestions or whatever. Because I mean, obviously he's, you know, in this kind of situation, I mean, he's my mentor, right? he's the one with the arcane knowledge that I'm still trying to learn. And so I routinely call him and we discuss it and kind of come up with ideas because he doesn't know what to make of it. We're just trying to figure it out, and he was actually, when I called him, he was balancing his checkbook. It's funny, people think that like you're a conspiracy nut and like you don't have a checkbook or you don't watch television and you live in this bunker in the middle of a field. It's like, no, I've got a checkbook. I watch Buried Sea Gold. I'm a normal person. Well, anyway, he was balancing his checkbook, and when he hit the equal key, right as I called, the total amount was 93.
Really?
Just 93. Yeah.
So did this lead to an increased interest or renewed interest in Thelema itself?
I don't think that it's led to an interest in Thelema, because although the
for you,
for me,
mm-hmm.
Initially, yes. Initially, it did. So most of my life, I've researched Thelema and I've researched occultism in general. I never really did anything about it. I was a book learner. I just read this stuff and read this stuff and read this stuff and read this stuff and read this stuff until the synchronicity started. And once the synchronicity started, fundamentally you're using the NAC cipher, the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts, the NAC cipher, Star Cipher, Star 6 cipher, whatever you want to call it. And you're using the Book of Law, written by Crowley. Well, it was dictated to Crowley by Iwaz. So you're using a cipher built into this Crowley book, and you're using the Crowley book to generate lists of words, and then you're using intuition and metaphysical feeling, shall we say, to decipher what it's trying to say. Because as you guys are probably aware, when you run stuff through the cipher, what you get back is metaphorical.
Right.
It's not literal.
Right.
It's metaphor. So you can see like which way the words are going. Are they positive words? Are they negative words? I mean, so on some occasions you'll get statements. Like I had a friend, I was friends with her brother in high school, and he committed suicide, and she missed him very badly. And so one day this mysterious photo of a plant shows up on her phone, and I don't know how it got there. She didn't know. She finally looked up the name of the plant. It was like the Song of India or something like that. And so I put it into the cipher, and in the middle of the output of the cipher, what I intentioned when I did it, because the way you kind of do it is you have something in your mind, so you have the intention of asking a question, and then you put in like keywords, or you can put in the question, and then you get these results. Well, the way I had always done it was you have the intention in your mind, and then you put in some keywords. And so I had the intention in my mind is, who put this there? And then I typed out the name of the plant, the Song of India. And halfway through the results, it said, I love you, I put it there. In two separate lines, one on top of another. One line said, I love you, and the second line said, I put it there. So sometimes you do get literal results, but it's very rare.
And it's something that's something in that case that is meaningful.
There is what I found, and I'm a part of a tarot group on Facebook. My friend Natalie, she made a tarot deck called Tarot Mood. It's really funny. It's kind of a little inappropriate, but it's super funny. And so she asked me to be in the group, and I'm in there, and I'm surrounded by tarot card readers, and I don't know how to do tarot to save my life, right? It's too much memorization. So one day they're all giving each other free readings, and I'm feeling really bad. I'm like, I can't give you a free reading because I don't know what this stuff. Every time they'd ask a question, what card represents your life? I'm like, the Empress. What card did you get this morning when your car broke down? The Empress. I mean, that was like always my answer because it's funny. But I decided to do cipher readings, and I think I did about 40 or 50 of them, and one for one, 100%. I nailed it, and there was always something meaningful in the result. Like I could interpret it, but I couldn't see something that'd be meaningful to you, right? But sure. Every time somebody found something meaningful, and it was the name of a town they lived in. It was something that somebody used to tell them. It was like a pet name for something. there's always something in it that they're like, oh my god, that made total sense to them. So, you know, it can be used like that.
And then so it's evolved past using just the Book of the Law as a source to run the cipher through, right? You guys are starting to do it with other works, and how is that evolving for your practice of using this?
Well, so originally, way back in the day, there was a lodge. It was called the QBLH Lodge, and there was a guy in there that wrote a program called the Lexicon. And basically what the Lexicon allowed you to do is to run the Star 6 cipher, the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts, against multiple books, one at a time. And it was like a DOS program. I mean, you know, written in basic, real simple thing. And so they would use this program in DOS to compare it against the Book of the Law or, you know, some of the other books that Crowley had written. Well, so for me, you know, I obviously did the same thing. I've run it against the Bible. I've run it against the Principle of Discordia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
I've run it. Oh yeah, that one's weird. When you run against the Principle of Discordia, it still works, but it's really strange.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hilarious. But when I the story of how I broke the Enochian cipher is really funny, but once I broke the Enochian cipher and I started running the Enochian cipher through the Book of Law, the results changed. And it actually got really weird. It got really, really weird. And so now at this point, I'm no longer using the Crowley derivative works. I'm actually running it through John D. stuff.
Okay. So is that kind of going back to the source, you feel like?
Yes, and the way that I got there is that I ran a message. So in the Enochian cipher, you literally type in the question, right? And names work. And I think I typed in, I forget what I typed in, but I think I typed in like John D or something. And the result was effectively I typed in John D using the Enochian cipher against the Book of Law. Right, and basically the result said, "Don't trust anything that Crowley wrote." It quite literally said, "Don't trust anything that Crowley wrote. Use John D. Or use D as a source." Well, I should send you guys some of the results. They're insane.
Yeah, please do.
Bonkers. Yeah, and some of them are highly personal. Like they're not. It's not metaphorical. Like in one I did more recently, I was trying to engage the secret chiefs of the Third Order, and I forget what I put in there, but the result was something to the effect of, what did it say? It said I said something like, "Is this the secret chiefs of the Third Order?" Question mark. The question mark doesn't matter; it's removed, right? It's more just, you know, for your own edification. And I should find it. But I said, you know, is this the secret chiefs of the Third Order? And the response was something to the effect of, yes, it is a secret chief of the Third Order. And if you follow the journey, you will be rewarded with arts and rewards. If you follow the Book of Law, it literally says the Book of Law. It said if you follow the Book of Law, you will perish, or followers of the Book of Law will not find rewards and will die or will perish like flies in the dirt.
So were you for what you were using for the cipher, were you using the Book of the Law, or were you using something else?
I was using what was I using for that one? I used the Book of the Law for that one, I think.
Okay.
And then it said, what did it say? It said follow the journey. Don't be distracted by drunkenness, women, or hair.
Our hair. Okay.
Hair.
Interesting.
And I'll tell you why that's interesting. Oh no, okay. You know what? I wasn't. I was using one of John Dee's books. I was using the. Oh it called? The name of it. It's the big one, the thick one. That comprises the 5 books of Enochian magic.
Okay.
Anyway, I was using that. Sorry, I'm trying to remember what it came out with and where I got it at the same time. I document all this stuff. Then I forget it when I come on your show and sound like a moron. But and then it said there's a space that's cleared a forest that's 6 by 2 feet, and there's another space not far away. And so the reason that was interesting is because obviously it's saying, you know, don't follow the book of the law, you're going to end up like a fly in dirt. And then it's going on to say, you know, don't be distracted by drunkenness, women, and hair. And, you know, I mean, I'm a person, and I'm a normal person, and I like to go have a few drinks with my friends. I don't drink excessively, but on occasion, if I'm talking conspiracy stuff or whatever, I'll have a few, and you know, have a few Mai Tais, and you know, get a little sloppy. And you know, I'm like any single guy. I like, you know, I think women are great, and I had just gone on a date with a woman, and one of the things that perplexed me about her that made her interesting to me was the way that she did her hair.
Okay.
And so then I get this result, and the reference to the hair was a direct reference to a date that I had gone on like 4 days before. That's what I mean about the Enochian cipher. It's in real time.
So basically, it was telling you, don't continue with this woman? I mean, it was like, do you think that that's what it was telling you? Okay.
Yeah, it was saying, because a previous one had actually told me, don't worry about it. We know your love life sucks. Don't worry about it. We got that. Just focus on the cipher. That was literally a message that I got.
Huh.
I know, it's weird, because when you use the Secret Cipher, you know, Alan will tell you, don't put in names, because certain, you know, names don't work. Put in locations, put in keywords, whatever, but names don't work. And the stuff you get back from it is highly metaphorical. When you use the Enochian cipher, it is not metaphorical, man. It is bang on.
It's almost literal. It's literal.
The only thing that happens is that what you get is a series of words, and the words are slightly out of sequence. And so you have to kind of put the words back in the sequence and put in maybe you have to put in an if. But in general, all the ifs, does, is, wheres, those are all in there. It just has to be rearranged to make sense. And so the only part that's a bit scrying is to rearrange the words slightly so it's readable. But when you get it out, you can read it. It's not like good. It's readable. It's a little jumbled, but you can make sense of it. So what I do is I do it in 3 phases. I get the words in raw form, then I organize them into a readable form, and then which I call readable. And then the final is where I go through and I kind of polish it a little bit to make it human readable. But the essence is there from when it's raw. And the way I caught it, this is really funny, the way I caught it is that I was on a conference call and I was curious. And I'm on this conference call and I'm a bit bored. And so I decided to change the program to use a 24-character alphabet versus a 26, because the Enochian alphabet is 24. And I ran it through the book of law, because that seems to be what you do, and I got back this result. And I sent it to a friend of mine who's a musician. And she said that it seemed like a poem. And that's not something you ever get with the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts. But it was readable, and it seemed like a poem, which meant to me to have an underlying structure. And I thought to myself, well, it's not readable. I wonder if it's double encrypted. Because D himself, I mean, you know, he was the court astrologer that was the first, you know, he was a spy, he was an alchemist, he was all these things.
Right.
So what he was extremely paranoid. And he was well known for double ciphering his stuff. So for whatever reason, I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to use a skip cipher. It works in the Bible code. So I used the skip cipher. I counted every 11th word, because 11 is the number of magic. D would have known that. And then suddenly I got back something that is almost like getting a grade A EVP. If you ever got that EVP where you're out in the graveyard and the EVP is like, hey dude, how's it going? You're like, that just doesn't happen. That's what this was like.
Sure. It was like it was literal. It was apparent. It was like a direct communication.
Yeah, and so I told Greenfield, I said, I feel like I'm like way out there, right? And Greenfield was like, well, do you feel like you're way out there on a limb, or do you just feel like you're way out there? And I said, no, I don't feel like I'm on a limb. I mean, who's going to saw it off? The saw hasn't been created for this limb yet, And he said, you're way out there. This is beyond anything that anybody's done with the cipher. And you're in new ground. I mean, I am in the undiscovered country. There's no rules because it's never been done.
So why do you think it works? Do you think that it's something to do with the nature of reality, maybe? This is like showing little rips in it, or is there really something to this idea of the secret chiefs?
Yeah, to add to that, with the secret chiefs, but to add to that, do you think you're communicating with some kind of real entity?
So to answer the last question first, just to make myself confusing, yes. I think I'm dealing with a secret chief, which is an enlightened being. When you get the responses back, it's very clear that it's coming from something that understands human and doesn't understand human in a abstract sense. Like when I studied anthropology. I'm probably the only conspiracy nut who actually studied, culture and the evolution of culture. But one of the things that you learn in linguistics is that we're ethnocentric.
Yeah.
Meaning that there's a way we do things because that's just the human way of doing things. And in linguistics, the joke was always the aliens are going to come. And how do you talk to them? Because they don't have any concept of your morality. They have no concept of your, they can decipher your language, but they can't decipher your humor, or they can't decipher, the idioms. It would be impossible for them to decipher humanity. They can decipher English, not human, because it's alien. And so, when you get stuff back, this stuff has the touch of humanity to it. Right, so it makes me think that I'm dealing with the secret chiefs, or a secret chief in particular.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a weird process because you can kind of see it evolving as you're running it. As far as why it works, I read a thing once that somebody posted on Facebook, and they said, not all Wiccans are witchcraft is not a religion, and not all Wiccans are witches, and not all witches are Wiccan. And if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's very true. And not all people who investigate this kind of stuff are deep-rooted occultists. Right. I'm not a member of the OTO, right? I'm a member of the Rosicrucians, and I'm a member because I want access to a library. And I'm a member of the Free Illuminatus movement. Right?
It's a good reason to be part of the Rosicrucians, is to get access to the library. It makes sense.
Yes. I think it's worth $150 a year.
Sure.
Yeah. But, so I'm not like an extreme occultist. I'm not, I'm not out there in the desert trying to download the Whore of Babylon or anything like that.
You're not going full Jack Parsons.
Full Jack Parsons. No, I'm not going full Jack Parsons. But the way that I think about it, at its root, if you ask somebody who understands the ciphers, and there are a number of ciphers. There's the Star 7 cipher, the Star 6 cipher, the Bible code, right? There's a bunch of different ones that seem to work for some reason. And in the case of the occult ones, the logic of it is much like Hellier. When you execute the cipher itself, whether you use our website, our iPhone app, or you draw the Germantria 26-pointed star, however you choose to do it, the act of you doing it is tripping. It's tripping something mystical. That you're actually engaging in a ritual. That because you're exercising the cipher, that is by virtue of engaging in a ritual. The way I like to think about it is that somewhere in the deep dark past, we actually understood how this stuff works. And it, to me, it's kind of a cop out to say, well, it's a ritual, right? You go on this website, you type in the stuff, it runs a PHP script, and that PHP script executes, and then when it executes, it's engaging the Akashic record, right? I don't know, it sounds kind of funny to me, but supposedly that's what it's doing, right? Or it's engaging the secret chiefs of the Akashic record, or the global consciousness, the supermind, or whatever you want to call it, the overmind, whatever. But to me, the way I think of it is like Warhammer. Do you guys know Warhammer?
It's a role playing game.
Warhammer. It's a role playing game with role figurines. Well, so in Warhammer, right? It's in like the 56th century. And by then, it's totally dystopian. They have no idea how any of their equipment works. It's been lost. The Mechanicum, these groups of cyborg people from Mars have hidden it. And nobody really understands how this stuff works. So if you think about it in terms of starting a car, you do the ritual of pouring the gas into the tank, right? And then you screw the thing shut, and then you walk in. You do the litany of car starting, and you engage in the ritual of key insertion. And then you engage in the ritual of key turning while you sing the praises of the great God Ford. That's the way 40K is. Well, I think we're dealing with something very...
Yeah, for anthropology, that's like a cargo cult.
Yes. I was trying not to go a full anthro on you, but yes. This is
yeah. A lot of people are familiar with that concept, so yeah.
Yeah. To me, the way, and I was trained in anthropology, I went to a 4-year school, big university, right? And this is a classic cargo cult scenario. So we're going in and we're doing sacred mathematics. Well, mathematics is sacred. Okay, sure, I buy that. But are you executing a ritual every time you use mathematics? The occultist will tell you yes. The mathematician will tell you no. But the mathematician also goes mad finding God in the numbers. Right?
Yeah.
The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, the numbers made him crazy. John Nash,
Right.
Game theory, the numbers made him crazy. So, there's something about numbers that are metaphysical. But I think we use metaphysics to bookend this process that we're doing because we don't completely understand it. And so we call it occultism, or sacred geometry, or sacred mathematics, because we're not understanding what's going on behind the scenes. For me personally, I think of it as like science. It's a form of science that we lost. And so I made the argument to Alan many times that what we're dealing with here is a lost science of some kind. And so it's occult engineering. And so when I go through and I build a website, with PHP, and I'm fixing the PHP code that this guy wrote, like eight years ago to get this thing to work, I'm engaged in occult engineering. Right? So I think of myself as more of an occult scientist or an occult engineer than an occultist. Because I'm not praying to Nut. I'm not praying to Aleister Crowley. I don't think, that Iwas is going to appear before me. And I would argue that Iwas is an interdimensional being that supports the extraterrestrial theory. So, again, interdimensional beings, you're getting into the realm of science again.
Right.
So I see it as like occult science.
And so if this is some type of technology, it's like it has something to do with the fabric or nature of reality itself and a way to manipulate it, which is what occultism is. Yes,
and it's a lost science. And the reason that I feel even more strongly about it now is that I'm using a book that's written in 1580 by John Dee, and I'm getting back details about a piece of land I own in Oregon that has a specific spot that is literally 6 feet by 2 feet, maybe 6 feet by 4 feet, that seems to have a vortex or something on it. I'm reading this result that comes out of a book that's, 500 years old that's that describes, a date I had. I mean, it makes no sense to me. Because the thing you have to reconcile is that was that message put there 400 years ago for me to find today, right? So that we're going to argue predestination, or was reality manipulated to put that message in there so that I would get it and it would make sense to me today?
That really boggles the mind.
Yeah, that's why the Enochian cipher is so weird. In fact, Alan and I talked about it, and we've decided that we're in the very early stages of writing a book to address it, because it's now transcended the Secret Cipher, the UFOnauts. So we're starting to write a book, both of us together, about occult ciphers in general.
But here's a question for you, Olaf. This concept of the third order. This is something that I want to know more about. I'm not quite certain that I really understand it. What do you perceive that as being?
So the secret chiefs of the third order, they are called many names, right?
Where does the term third order come from? Where does that term come from?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I believe it does have some origin with P.B. Randolph's triplicate order.
Okay.
Probably. But that part I'm still learning. But what I do know is who constitutes the third order. And one of the things that the Enochian cipher told me in the process of exercising it was to not. I'm going to publish all these results eventually, so you can read them. But one of the things that it's very clear about is to not get hung up about the structure, because when you deal with occultism, right, you have a lot of people. They, like the OTO, right? They've got all these ranks that you go through. For Masonry, you've got all these ranks that you go through. You have to have certain levels of knowledge to achieve certain things, right? For whatever reason, I bypassed all that. And actually, when it happened, it was kind of funny. But when it really started, I had gone to my land. This is probably worth the story before I explain that to Secret Chiefs. I had gone to my land in Oregon, because I didn't know there's a spot where three trees fell, and they form a perfect square with the fourth tree missing, so you can enter, right? Inside of it, this space, it has a very strange feeling. There's like a time dilation. And you know how like when you're like walking around in the field, you can estimate. You'd be like, I think I've been here for about a half an hour.
Sure.
And you go look at the clock, and it's been like 27 minutes, right? Because you have an internal chronometer. Well, when we were there, we actually did an experiment, like a perception experiment, where we tried to. My son was there. We tried to figure out how long we'd actually been on that land. And we were like, I don't know, we must have been here 2 or 3 hours, right? No, we were there for 57 minutes.
So you had like some weird kind of like time dilation going on, like missing time, but in reverse in a way. Yeah.
In reverse, we got more done in 57 minutes than we ever thought possible. So we're hiking out of there because it's very remote. It's on the side of a mountain. I mean, there's a highway next to it, but getting in and out of there, it's a cinder road, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with cinder roads. It's a cinder road. There's no people, no nothing, and we're walking out of there, and my son goes, "What is that? There's something shiny over there." And it's like, well, there should be no people here. This Bigfoot. And I'm like, I don't know. Let's go check it out. Guess what? It's a happy birthday balloon in the middle of the forest at 7,000 feet in the middle of the forest on the side of a mountain.
Okay,
I'm 60 miles from a decent sized city.
Very similar to some of the things in Hellier.
In Hellier.
Yep.
So I pick it up. We drive back to Klamath Falls. I'm east of Klamath Falls. And so I'm on the opposite side of the mountain from Klamath Falls. So it makes it even weirder. I call Greenfield. I said, I found a happy birthday balloon in the middle of the forest. And he says, well, happy birthday. He's like, you know what's going to happen? I'm like, yes, I'm going to get a gift, right? And so I'm talking to him. I'm like, you need to teach me everything, because there are gaps. Like you asked me about why the third order. Alan can answer that for you. I cannot. And so I'm like, you've got to teach me everything. I don't know some of this stuff because I didn't move up through the OTO. I haven't studied the Crowley stuff every day for the last 40 years, right? And he goes, no, I don't. I said, why is that? He goes, because they're teaching you. They're teaching you what you need to know. And I'm like, okay. And again, this parallels Hellier. And I said, okay. And he goes, look, you're learning by balloons. Follow the balloons and they tell you the answer. Which is, again, what he told the guys at Hellier. I mean, they did that interview. He tells them, follow the balloons, right? So I drive from Klamath Falls to Reno. And when you drive from Klamath Falls to Reno, it was a last-minute decision. We just kind of decided what the hell and did it. I'm driving to a place called El Turas. El Turas is in the middle of nowhere. There is nothing near it. It's just field. It's like driving across Montana or North Dakota, if you've ever done that. Okay?
Yeah.
But there's this vast tracts of forest, just like Montana or North Dakota. Parts of it, there's just forest. Well, not so much North Dakota, but Montana. You'll go through these phases where it's like flat forest land for like 100 miles. That's what this is like. And I'm driving along, and there's something shining off to my left. I'm like, what is that? What is that? And my son, he goes, oh, it's a balloon in a tree. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, I slam on the brakes. I lay down on the brakes. Like, I've got this big Toyota 4x4, the whole thing shaking. Big, and I did a U-turn in the middle of the highway. And I drive back, and I get onto this little cinder road about 30 feet away from the balloon. And I have photographs of it. I couldn't get it down. It was too high. Guess what I found? I found a blue star balloon. And next to it, I found, next to it, hanging in the tree, I found a sports balloon. And so, the sports balloon indicated that you're going to, whatever the blue star balloon is trying to tell you, and there's a lot of debate about that. The sports balloon is like, well, it's gonna take teamwork to figure it out. And some of the stuff that I've done, I can find it, but I need Greenfield to help me interpret it, right? And so it's teamwork, just like the balloon said. So I come back home, and I'm like, what the hell, right? And so I go to the quick stop. The quick stop. You guys have the quick stop, right?
Yes.
Circle K,
Yep.
7-Eleven. Okay, I go to the quick stop to buy a candy bar. I just needed a Nestle Crunch bar. It's 3 minutes from my house. I go down there. I go to pull out. And guess what I find?
Another balloon?
Yeah. And this time it's a congratulations, graduate 2020 balloon. Now, what had happened right before right before I found my graduate balloon is that on the way through Alturas, after I found the missing link here, I forgot to tell you, is after I found the star balloon, I'm on the phone with Greenfield in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, dude, I'm like freaking out, and I found the blue star balloon. Oh my god! And he's like, you really need to like dedicate yourself to the study of the cipher, right? He's like, everything is telling you to do that. You need to figure this thing out. And he said, you know what? Why don't you form a lodge, like a Hermetic lodge, and dedicate the Hermetic lodge to this? And I'm like, okay. So he said, I'll charter it through the Free Illuminist movement. I'll charter it, and that way you have a legitimate thing. Because he's like, I feel like this is what you need to do. So I founded the Celestial Lodge of Sirius because there's some tie to Sirius. I don't know what, I don't know how, but there's a tie to Sirius. And the Dogon, and you know.
Right,
and
yeah.
So
the Robert Temple book, yeah.
Yes. So I chartered the lodge with the Free Illuminist movement as the Celestial Lodge of Sirius. And I have a charter and everything. You know, it's got a stamp on it that approves me. I'm all legit, right? And then I find the cipher, the Enochian cipher, and I'm like, oh my God. And I go to get a candy bar, and then I find the Graduate 2020 bullet. And of course, I call Greenfield, because who else am I going to call, right? And he's like, congratulations, you graduated. And so now the focus is to try to understand it.
Yeah.
So long story short is that I don't know who the second order is because they haven't told me yet. And they're teaching me by balloon account. But what I do know is that the third order, they're enlightened, formerly human beings that are benevolent who are supposed to assist us in our times of need.
What it really seems like to me is that something is really giving back to you, because if you think about it, you're so instrumental in propagating these ideas by publishing Greenfield's books initially and later.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. And I published them for years and nobody bought them. I would actually call Alan up and I'd be like, I'm so sorry. This month you get $1. I mean, it's heartbreaking because I love his book. It'd be like, dude, you made $1 this month.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden,
call him up and apologize.
all of a sudden, because of Hellier, it just blows up. But to Serfiel's point, you did put it out there, and you put it back. You put it back into circulation at least.
Ron Bonds from Illuminat had published it. Ron Bonds had died mysteriously of poisoning after eating a salad in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Not far from actually Allen. But he was in Wilbur, Georgia. He went to a Mexican restaurant. He died of indigestion. The book fell off the face of the earth, and I found it in the face of the earth phase. And I went to Alan. I said, "I love your book. I just want to publish it because it needs to be in print. I don't care if I make money off of it. I don't care. It needs to be printed." And for years, I did it just because I felt so strongly that the message of the ultra-terrestrials and the theory behind the Secret Cipher was so important that it needed to be published.
So what's the timeline for those publications? When was it first published by Illuminat, and then when did you do it?
So I think it was originally published by Illuminat somewhere in the early 90s. It would have been like 94.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and then I think I took over publishing it in like 2008. Okay, so that edition's been out quite a while then. That's been 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because I figured it was probably later than that.
No, I think it was 2008 or 2009.
So how did you even hear about it in the first place? Like, how did you even find out?
I'm a book nerd.
Yeah.
I'm a book nerd. I had original copies from Illuminat. I mean, I still do, but I had original copies from Illuminat that I bought, when I was in college. In the mid '90s, when I was in college, I bought copies of it. I loved that stuff. I loved everything that Ron Bonds was publishing. I mean, I have all the Jim Keith stuff. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of the stuff that Illuminat published. Because it was the early to mid '90s. I was a college student. The New World Order stuff that Jim Keith was talking about. We were listening to Occult on the radio.
Yeah.
So it was a weird time. So I knew about it from there. I went into a used bookstore in Davis and I bought it.
Yeah. That's a good segue to start talking about your involvement in Paranoia magazine and your history with the conspiracy theory culture. Is there anything else, though, that you'd like to put out there about the Cipher and Greenfield stuff and Hellier and your experience with this before we kind of segue into that?
Sure. So on Facebook, the Facebook machine, which I hate, but that's how people communicate, there is a Alan Greenfield page. And so Alan got somehow banned from Facebook.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he keeps making Facebook pages. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
yeah, it's funny. So we finally just made one, and he's on Weenie, and so I try to take the stuff he posts on Weenie and put it on Facebook. But, follow there or check me out, if you want to follow the Secret Cipher stuff, especially the Enochian Cipher stuff, because I've used them enough now that I feel confident about the transliteration, so I'm going to start posting the stuff I figure out. I mean, I needed to come to a point where I felt that the transliterations that I was making were reasonable and accurate. Because I don't want to put it out there when it's wrong. So I tried to, I had Alan and I proofed it together, and I feel comfortable enough now that I'm going to start writing about it. Again, Alan and I are eventually going to write a book on secret occult ciphers, because there are a bunch of them, and they work. And I think that people have been exposed to the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts now. Go get the book. It's like the complete cipher of the UFOnauts. You know what I mean? But I think enough people have exposed to it now. That we need to push it further, because there's a lot there. And Alan's intention when he wrote the book originally was that people would get it and do what you guys did, do what I did, which is attempt to use it. But nobody did. Now they are.
Yeah.
And so he feels fantastic. Okay.
Now so much so that our friend Ren Collier actually has his own little program. I guess he calls it the New American English or New Aeon English Kabbalah. Yeah, NAEQ.io.
Yep.
He's got that on there. And I was going to ask you something real quick before we kind of move on.
I used his code off at GitHub for the secretcipher.com.
Yeah.
He was gracious enough to put it on GitHub and open source it. So I wanted people to use it. So Alan and I put up a website for it under the Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts theme, to try to get people to use it.
Cool.
You mentioned something earlier that you shouldn't put names into the Secret Cipher.
Correct.
What is the problem with names? What's the issue with that?
So, this passed on to me from Greenfield, and it kind of works with my own experiences as well. For whatever reason, when you put people's names, not names of cities, but like people's names, like you put terrorist in there, and I've tried it, for some reason the results are very cloudy. It's better if you use keywords and then you intention terrorist and then you put in keywords versus putting in terrorist. Now, if you put terrorist into the Enochian cipher, you get a whole different.
But it can work.
It can work. No, it does work. It doesn't work as well.
Okay.
As long as you put English into it, it works. People have experimented with using other languages, and using it's based on English, so using English words works the best. But yeah, if you put a name in there, it absolutely will work. It's more cloudy. Like if you're shaking the magic 8-ball, it'll say, the outcome is cloudy. It's just harder to divine what's going on with it.
Okay. Interesting. Because I've done some work with the name in there, so I just was wondering about that.
Yeah, no, it absolutely works.
Yeah.
It's very flexible.
Yeah. My use of a name in it was pretty metaphorical, but I actually understood it. I'm just going to leave that there. So.
But that's probably why it worked, is because you used the name, but it was metaphorical in nature.
Yeah. It actually had something to do with a tarot reading that I had way before a couple of weeks before I'd actually used, or way before I'd actually used it, and it actually corresponded.
We'll go back real quick too, because I guess this really started for you, Adam, with Ren doing an angelic Enochian ritual.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And then your tarot experience.
Actually, the tarot experience was actually 2 days before. 2 or 3 days bore. First, you had the tarot reading that Heather did, and then the Enochian experience, Enochian ritual that Ren did in Atlanta at Paramania. And then after that, I used the cipher, and it confirmed things from the tarot reading. It was interesting.
I tell people, I make a joke about it, but I tell people, that you should go watch The Power of Myth before attempting to use the cipher, because it's all metaphorical. So if you put in something metaphorical in nature, that's a different conversation. If you put in a name that's metaphorical in nature, it will work absolutely, and it will probably work very well, because you're putting in metaphor for metaphor.
Yes.
Now, once I get this thing tightened up with the Enochian cipher, and I teach you guys how to use that, then it'll really blow your mind. Because when you go to use the Enochian stuff, it's based on the Enochian alphabet. So if you're putting in Enochian names or things to deal with Enochian rituals, then the results you get will be very powerful.
So using because the way Alan uses it in the book is one of the things that he does is he takes the names of these beings that the contactees were in contact with, and right, and Orthon and people, characters like that. Yeah. So I guess in a way that those names are kind of metaphorical in and of themselves.
Exactly, because when he put in Orthon, one of the results he got back is that Orthon is equivalent to Jesus, which he references in the book. So, the numeric value is the same.
Okay.
Now I'll tell you something very interesting about Hellier, is that there's an episode called The Altar, and I forget exactly what happens in The Altar, but it's really one of the turning points in the second season. If you put in the altar into the Nac cipher, then what you get back is a 93.
Oh, really?
And I don't know if they did that. Yeah, I don't know if they did that intentionally. I've never gotten a response from them, but it is a 93.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, it's all metaphorical. Right?
Well, okay, right. So we were talking. We were going to ask about involvement with Paranoia magazine.
Well, and I wanted to ask you first, Olav, how you first really became or were introduced to this conspiracy culture, for lack of a better term, I guess.
So it's actually funny, and I actually told this story to what's his name? Brad. What's his last name? He was like prolific. Brad Steiger, brother Brad.
Yeah.
I got into this because of Brad Steiger. And so I was, 8 years old, something like that, 8, 10 years old. Maybe I was 10. I was sitting in my room in the 80s, reading a Choose Your Own Adventure, and there was a big light by my window. And it was a bluish-white light, and it just hung in front of my second-story window and just didn't move. It kind of vibrated a little bit. It lit up my room, but it wasn't, like, blinding. And I didn't know what the hell it was. And so I did what any, between 8 and 10-year-old would do. I hid under my comforter, right? I come back up, and it's still there. And I hid under my comforter, and it's still there. And I hid under my comforter, and I'm like, oh my God, these are aliens. They're going to take me away. What am I going to do? Right? So I worked up the courage, and I ran across the hall to my parents' room. My dad was in the Air Force. My grandfather was in the Air Force, as you guys know from when I wrote. So I figured my father was growing up on Air Force bases from the 50s on up, and 40s actually. And so, I figured he's probably seen every kind of military aircraft, civilian aircraft in the face of the earth, right? I mean, the guy rode on a Lockheed Constellation to Havana, before Castro took over. So, he's seen every kind of airplane. So I run in, I wake my dad up, and I'm like, Dad, there's something outside my window. I don't know what it is. You were in the Air Force. You got to tell me what this thing. Does being in the Air Force equates to being an expert on everything that's in the air in your time? So he says, okay, he had a police baton from the Air Force, and he says, okay, he was in law enforcement. He says, get behind me. I'm like, all right. So he's got this club, and he goes, and we walk across the hallway, opens the door, got the club, opens the door, nothing there. And I got back into bed, and I'm like, you believe me, right? He goes, I believe you. I absolutely believe you. And he's 75 years old, and I asked him about a month ago, I said, Dad, did you really believe me? He goes, yeah, I still believe you to this day. Okay. Well, anyways, so the next day, it was library day, as luck would have it. And so I went to the library at my elementary school, back when elementary school still had librarians and libraries. And they really have crappy ones now, but back then we had good ones. And so I went to the librarian, and, back then the librarian was not so much a librarian, but more like your guide to a literary universe, right? Like a travel guide. And so you go, oh, Mystic Librarian, I would like information about Tibet. And they go, okay. And almost with absolute precision, they would give you the Dewey Decimal Number, and you go look it up, right? And
they were your Google.
They were Google, basically, yeah. And so Google, but the output was not human readable. It was a Dewey Decimal. So I go to the librarian, and I said, oh, Mystic Librarian, I saw something bizarre outside my window on the second floor. I want to understand what I saw. And she goes, oh, okay. So it gives me a Dewey Decimal System number. So I go over to that place, and it's just a bunch of books about airplanes. I came back, and I said, no, you're not understanding. I said, I know what an airplane looks like. I grew up on an Air Force base, okay? I know what F-111s look like, and F-16s and F-15s and all that shit. And I said, I'm trying, this was different, this was weird, and I want to know what it is. And her response, I'll never forget it, she looked down at me with those big glasses, when they make glasses like really huge, circular. She looks down at me with the permed hair and says, oh, you want those books? And I said, yes. And so she goes, okay. And this time I didn't get a Dewey Decimal Number because she didn't know what it was. So she told me, she's like, okay, it's the far bookshelf on the left. I can still take you to this day. Far bookshelf on the left of the other room, down at the bottom, and you're facing the bookshelf lower right-hand corner. So I go down there, and there's Jacques Deleuze, there's J. Allen Hynek, and then there's Brad Steiger, the Mysteries of Time and Space. So I tried to read Deleuze. It was too complex because it's metaphorical. Men in black as trolls and gnomes and all this stuff. And I don't know. It just did not make sense to me. I tried to read Hynek.
That got saved for later.
Yes. Hynek was too dense because it's scientific in nature. And it was just too damn dense for a fourth grader to read. And then I found this Mysteries of Time and Space by Brad Steiger. And I read it cover to cover. And I read it again. And it blew my mind. Because in Mysteries of Time and Space, you're talking about UFOs, cryptids, vortexes, time slips. Because that book is a little bit of everything. And that book did not tell me what I thought. It did not answer it at all. But boy, did it sure blow my mind. And so after that, I just became consumed by it. And I've been consumed by it ever since. So Paranoia was founded by Joan d'Arc and Al Haddell. And I believe the first issue was put out in 1992. After a while, publishing became hard. And it's still hard to this day. But Joan sold it to a guy named Ron Patton. And Ron Patton, he's a world expert on mind control. I mean, if you want to know about Ultra, Artichoke, he knows. Hummingbird, Monarch. He knows about all that stuff. Well, he was a writer for Paranoia, and he bought it off of Joan and Al. And then eventually, I got my hands on it. I started as a writer for Paranoia.
Okay.
And then it became available, and so I bought it. I actually bought it from a guy named Larry Overman, who was the guy from Ghostmine. You ever watched Ghostmine on Sci-Fi? He had bought it off of Ron, and then I bought it off of him about a year after he bought it off of Ron.
Yeah, I think Ron didn't he go to work for like Clyde Lewis as a producer?
Yeah, So I was a producer for Clyde for a long time, and then I stopped, and then there were a couple of other people in between, and then Tracy Twyman was the last one, and then after Tracy, I went to Clyde and I said, you got to hire Ron. You need Ron. He knows all this stuff. So so Ron went to work there. So, and Ron's still the producer.
Yeah. What were some of the first articles you wrote for it?
I wrote a lot of the early stuff. A lot of it was Nazi UFOs, the secret space program. I wrote some stuff about the Byrne memo, the JFK Byrne memo. I wrote some stuff about the Enochian, which I apparently pronounced wrong. Enochian. A bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, that was the SS is kind of like basically what you see in Raiders of the Lost Ark, essentially trying to find. They're going to Tibet and doing their kind of like racial theories out there, and then the search for the Holy Grail, Otto Ron, yeah.
In fact, they did way more than that. That's just the surface of it. One of these days, I'll get around to writing my book about it. But the SS in general, not just the Enochian, there were other teams within the SS. The Enochian specifically was interesting because it was a radicalization of the educational community. So what Himmler had done is I believe under Karl Wolff, he had created the Enochian, and then he went to college professors and historians and co-opted them and gave them all this money for research to prove Atlantis was real and the ultimate fool was a place and whatever, and to promote their racial theories. And he used the Enochian to do that. Hans Schiffer, 7 years in Tibet. Hans Schiffer, he was the guy that led the SS team into Tibet. They did a bunch of chronology. They actually did bring back a group of Tibetan monks who lived in Berlin.
Yeah, I think that was left out. I think that part was left out of the movie, I think.
I think it was very specifically left out of the movie.
Yeah.
They have dinners. They're having dinners with these Tibetans, and they felt that the Tibetans were their long lost, Atlantean brothers.
Right.
And, there's pictures of Hans Schiffer, drinking with the Tibetans, and in the back they're like SS pennants, and they left all that out. But the Enochian was technically the ancestral heritage division of the SS. They were under the race and resettlement department.
I kind of want to get into you with a little bit about what's going on now, with as a conspiracy theorist, and we kind of still consider ourselves that as well. Obviously, since we have a show called Conspirinormal. But things are things are crazy in general right now. But in the conspiracy theory world, I think it's just gone into complete overdrive. Mm-hmm. And we've noticed that we talked about this on a couple of episodes ago with a good friend of ours named Recluse, who's very keyed into a lot of this kind of material. That there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that's going on right now.
Sure.
And that the conspiracy narrative has really just been weaponized.
It has. It really has. It's been weaponized to the point where you just kind of want to lay low.
Yeah.
Because there's, I went to ground. I wrote an article about COVID-19 proving that I think that the thing, there's a high likelihood that it emerged from that weapons lab in the where, what's the name of the town that it came from?
Wuhan. Yeah.
Wuhan. Yeah, the Wuhan virology lab. You know, a lot of the things that they were saying on the news were inaccurate about the distances from the virology lab to the market, you know, etc. And there were some prominent epidemiologists and virologists who were saying some very crazy things like early on. And the growth of it was so expansive and so rapid that I made the case that it was what I believe it's weaponized SARS, that they had weaponized it. They had gotten the bat SARS from the bats. They had weaponized it, and then I think that there was an accident. And I think somebody had a needle stick and didn't want to admit it. You know, went through their bunny suit, didn't want to admit it because in China, if they had admitted it, that meant that they would have been torched, right? I mean, they're going to burn the body, right?
Yeah.
As him and everybody came into contact with, and whoever's left, they're going to send them to re-education camp. But I think whoever it was took the risk that nothing would happen.
Right.
And went to the market to buy dinner and sprung it. So I put out that narrative. I believe it. I believe it's still accurate. But after that, it just went crazy. And I don't know what to grab. I mean, you know, we've got a president who believes Alex Jones is the next coming, and I think that's dangerous.
Yeah, and I know like Ken Thomas talks a lot about when we talk to him about this, what he called like a politically schizophrenic conspiracy theory, where really it seems like in the 90s, the right and left-oriented conspiracy theorists could still coexist, but it's like now that's absolutely impossible.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, back in the 90s and the 2000s, you know, left and right-wing conspiracy theorists could easily coexist because the nature of the conspiracy was universal. I mean, I consider myself to be a centrist. Now, I'm definitely not a super conservative person, but I'm not a super liberal person. I'm like most everybody out there. I'm in the middle, and
sure. Yeah.
And I don't think, and I don't. I'm very leery of people who, you know, I'm a very conservative conspiracy theorist. And it's like, well, if you're too part of the right, too part of the left, I think you're losing track of all the other stuff in the middle. In the middle is where the stuff lives. It's gray. Everything's gray.
Right.
But yeah, no. Right now it's too schizophrenic because, you know, in the news, is it the China virus? Is it the Wuhan virus? Is it SARS? Is it novel coronavirus? You know, we know the real name of it, right? It's COVID-19, novel coronavirus. But, you know, there's so many, especially with the Russians playing around and the Chinese themselves playing around in the internet and in the news and confusing people. You know, it's a funny thing there. To kind of understand the logic behind it, you know, we could see the outliers of this happening years ago, but we all ignored it, right? And, you know, you ignore it because you think that it's BS, or you ignore it because you think it's, you just ignore it because it's not your belief system, right? But, you know, you look at veterans today, right? And back in the day, there was a website, it probably still exists, called Veterans Today, and this guy, I think he was like a Army veteran or something. But it has nothing to do with veterans. It's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy soapbox. You know, it has all kinds of conspiracy. Yeah, where the United States is pretty much the root of all evil. Well, one day he said that he was going to an anti-terrorist conference. And I thought that was a novel idea for this guy. That's interesting. And it was sponsored by an outfit called Press TV. I thought, that's funny. I wonder who Press TV is. You know, there's this photo of him sitting at this table. They're talking with Middle Eastern leaders about terrorism. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And so I looked at it, and I was able to identify 8 of the 9 people sitting at the table. And one of them was the leader of Hezbollah. One of them was the leader of the PLO. One was the leader of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. The rest of them, it was like a terrorist watch list. Like, sitting at the table with this guy. And I'm like, wow, that's an anti-terrorist summit, okay? And so then I looked up Press TV. And Press TV is owned by the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yep.
And basically this guy who's an American, who is a military commentator for Press TV, he's basically financed by the Republic of Iran. Now, I don't think Iran is a fundamentally bad place. You know, I think that we like any country, we dehumanize our enemy. You know, I think the Iranian people are probably pretty awesome. But the government of Iran has an agenda, just like the government of the United States has an agenda. I mean, we just lit fire to their plutonium processing facility after we blew it up using a virus. Right? I mean, we have an agenda there. It's just politics. But, you know, the conspiracy world was being inundated by these people. And this guy's a fraud. He's a fraud, he's a fraud, he's a fraud. And then I started to watch all this stuff coming out of Russia Today. And, you know, Jesse Ventura on Russia Today. It's like, legitimately Russia Today. Yeah, and it's like, well, who's Russia Today? Well, Russia Today occupies the former offices of Pravda, which was the state newspaper for the Soviet Union. Their budget, they live in the same office, run by the same people. Their budget comes straight out of the Kremlin. Their budget is approved and managed by Vladimir Putin himself.
Yeah.
Not through a proxy. Vladimir Putin approves their budget, and they use all the old KGB tricks. If they have somebody who's talking about, you know, the Kentucky Goblin, then they will have a Russian speaking in English with a Southern accent. That we went to their version of defense language.
Yeah.
If they have somebody who's talking about, you know, how the English are terrible people, which they do quite often, they'll have somebody speaking with an English accent, probably from a London accent.
Whereas in the past, it was the more left-leaning people that they were targeting. Now it's a lot more the more right-leaning conservatives.
Right. But at the same time, they want those same people in power because they can manipulate them, and they've shown time and time again that they can. And I started to look around at all this. And this is years ago, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, guys, hold on a minute. You know, that's great. You're publishing this news in a news report about how Obama is going to do away with the Second Amendment and put us all into a police state. It's from Russia Today. Well, that's funny. You know, I don't know that he ever got rid of the Second Amendment or put us into a police state, but that sure is a Russian agenda item to make us think they are. He is. You know. And during those years, they were really active. I was studying international relations during those years, the Obama years, and yeah, they were really working towards like co-opting kind of anti-establishment types, your Alex Jones types, and people like that. Intellisthesia, everything else. They were really And then, you know, I mean, the pinnacle was the whole Guccifer thing. Guccifer 3.0 or 1.0 or whatever it was. Guccifer was not a person. Guccifer is a GRU unit that's probably got 150 people. So, you know, they kept and don't, you know, I'm not going to defend us. I mean, we do the same thing. We do the same thing.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but
if someone's into conspiracy theory, they should be able to recognize, you know, what's behind messaging. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, now, within the last few years, suddenly the radicalization of conspiracy theory occurred. And the people that were following RT and talking like, you know, RT was like right, and they seemed to have the number on this global conspiracy, right? Suddenly those people are in power, and suddenly Alex Jones, who's a huge proponent of some of these wacko conspiracies, you know, suddenly he's telling the president of the United States to make political decisions based on, you know, there are good conspiracies. There are good conspiracies and there are bad conspiracies, right? You know, Gary Webb found some real conspiracies and he ended up in a bad one.
Right.
But, you know, some of the stuff that Alex Jones puts out there is just utter horseshit. and suddenly that is now being institutionalized into the executive branch of the United States. And I'm thinking to myself, I really don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough having our name really turns a lot of people off, even if they don't really know us. Just seems like me and Adam also come from that turn of the century and 90s conspiracy culture, and everything that was pioneered back then, including other things I want to get into, it seems like we're really just like mined for future use, and in particular like the John Teeter stuff and Ong's hat, like these alternate reality games from the early internet were really mined and studied and weaponized. So now we have things like QAnon,
which is exceptionally which is exceptionally ugly.
It is
exceptionally ugly.
And I have yet to see anything that I went somewhere the other night and I parked, and next to me was a truck. I was coming back from Mount Shasta. I decided to have a metaphysical experience on Mount Shasta. So I go to Shasta, and I'm going to call the Lemurians, right? And do a CE5 thing. Actually, we saw a UFO. But I'm coming back, and I'm getting gas from, I'm up in Redding somewhere, and the truck next to me has got a big old Q sticker. Mm-hmm. I don't like to name names because I think it's counterproductive, but we'll just say that there's a person out there in the conspiracy space where he's now blending hippie culture and QAnon.
Yeah.
And so you've got the metaphysics of hippie culture and metaphysics in general, and it's not being blended with QAnon, and that's a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, well, that stuff in particular, me and Adam have been talking a lot about it because there's this explosion and it's within the QAnon stuff too of this like rehashed satanic panic, fear of children being, used in these evil cabals. Suppose somehow there's tens of thousands of children missing that no one knows about. That like these themes right now are absolutely exploding, like I've never seen in my life.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in the last few days, as we're recording this on August the 11th, in the last few days, there's been this attempt to really kind of hijack by the QAnon people. And I guess the Pizzagate people, I think that's pretty much the same thing now. But
the anti-human trafficking stuff.
Yeah, the actual like real anti-human trafficking organizations to hijack the hashtag Save the Children. Today, I was seeing it all over the place on Facebook.
We have a problem with human trafficking.
Yeah, it's real.
And it's real. And just a month ago, they found these cargo containers. I think they were in Belgium, and they had found these cargo containers that were soundproofed. They were basically mobile torture chambers, and they were being shipped around on cargo ships. And one of them was rigged to store people, and it was obvious that they had loaded these people onto a container ship to take them wherever. And you watch a movie like Hostel, and you realize that Hostel, although it's a movie and it's particularly gruesome, Hostel exists. These are real things. And there are very good international organizations for fighting these, but it's not QAnon. And the problem I have with QAnon is that when you're dealing with QAnon, and these information dumps, and again, the only person I'll name besides from Corey Good, who I love, is Carrie Catholic. She's done some good stuff, but, she's also a victim of these information dumps. And some of the people that she's talked to, like, when you look at their background, it's like, what are you doing? Who are these people? But QAnon, these information dumps, I have yet to see one that actually provides any information about much of anything. And it was almost like when Gustafer got blown and Assange went into the Ecuadorian embassy, they cooked up QAnon as another method to distribute this stuff.
What I've noticed is just like I will see memes that these people post, and like I should really just block these people because it makes my blood pressure go up. But it's like at the same time, I really want to know what they're saying because I want to know how bad this is getting. But like, I'll see memes that just make these allegations, are just make a statement, and then like that's all. But that's all they put up there. But that's all people are going to look at. That's all they're going to care about. They're not going to go do the research, find out that it's neither is true or it isn't true. But it's just like, it's just and it makes me think that just like, this is just troll farm stuff. That's all it is.
It is. It's what is it? Click porn, troll farm stuff.
It's interesting how it is now. Of course, it's gearing up because now we're going into the election, and it's a way to further divide people from the whole mask debate, and I really seriously think that what they're trying to do there is just kill Americans. They just want to kill Americans, and then it's so interesting that this is happening now, but especially when you get something like Trump in that Axios interview, where they asked him about Ghislaine Maxwell, and the guy said, well, why did you wish her well? She's convicted of child trafficking. And Trump says, big deal. But yet nobody says anything about that in the QAnon world. They just overlook it, and they still think Trump is their hero that is going to go get these kids out of these underground bunkers. It's just crazy.
Right.
But they have no context. Like, we all saw we all are familiar with the Satanic Panic stuff, with the Monarch stuff, and that was really big. So it's just, when you already have that background and understand all these like memes in the old conspiracy world that existed, and just see them rehashed and like weaponized like that to a particular party, it's insane. Like, I've never seen anything like it.
Well, and what is QAnon? See, the thing that I always do, right, is I follow the money. And what is QAnon actually doing? QAnon is diluting the conspiracy culture. It's diluting walk through conspiracy theory. So instead of, as conspiracy people, instead of going and saying, okay, let's take an open source intelligence approach and a conspiratorial view of the world, the Ralph Epperson, the conspiratorial view of history, and look at what the Russians are doing, right? Now the Russians are our friends, and QAnon is telling us the truth. It's all been flipped upside down, and it's polluting the water so bad that instead of doing what conspiracy people used to be doing, which is they are doing weather modification. That is true. They really do weather modification. They really are putting fluoride in the water. There's fluoride. There's muscle relaxants. There's a whole pharmacy floating around in your water that makes you docile and passive, and it gives you cancer. That's true. And instead of worrying about what we're doing with these CIA black sites, where they're widening. They're widening the catches of who they're taking, instead of looking at Portland and saying, okay, we're in a class war. We're seeing the outliers of a true class war and a racial war. And we got to fix this shit. We got to do it now. Instead of worrying about that, they're diluting it by sending DHS paramilitary guys to drive around in white U-Haul vans and just grab people off the street. Why? Because you spray painted a building? And it terrorizes those people. Then Antifa says, okay, well, it's Antifa time then. And it just deteriorates. It's what it is it's a radicalization of conspiracy theory. So that it used to be that us conspiracy theory guys, we were onto real stuff. The CIA trafficking drugs in the South Central, right? That was a very famous one.
Yeah.
Gary Webb.
What's really behind foreign policy and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. What are the Russians really doing? Did you know that the narco traffickers coming out of Colombia and South America are buying submarines or building submarines to traffic this stuff? It's like the things that are, nobody's, what it's like? This is what it's like. Do you guys know what Covert Action Quarterly is?
Yeah, I grew up reading that.
Okay, Covert Action Quarterly, for your listeners that don't know, is a conspiracy magazine run by ex-CIA guys, and it's exceptionally good. And it's the design of it is not fantastic, but the information is bang on. Well, we're not reading Covert Action Quarterly. Now what we're doing is we're reading TMZ. We're getting our conspiracy theories from TMZ. And
memes.
And that is and memes. And that is destroying because what the conspiracy theorist really was that fourth column, right? They were the fourth estate. They were the ones that functioned outside the fourth column. They were the fourth estate, like journalists. Conspiracy theorists are not journalists, but they occupy that same space where you've got global media conglomerates, and then you've got these independent research journalists out there finding the truth about stuff. And a lot of times they were tripped onto something from a conspiracy theorist. And so the conspiracy theorist and the fourth estate researcher, they're out there on the edge looking at needles in a haystack saying, okay, well, there's a weird pattern here, right? But that doesn't exist anymore because they weaponized it. They weaponized it and co-opted it. I mean, the whole idea, as a conspiracy theorist, the whole idea that a conspiracy theorist is advising the chief executive of the United States of America is horrifying. Mm-hmm. Because as a conspiracy theorist, I know that the stuff that I found is circumstantially very interesting. And there's a finite limit to how far you can push it. And as a conspiracy theorist, I have a responsibility to publish what I find, but also to say, hey, this is circumstantial. You need to go look for yourself and prove it.
Right.
I'm going to give you I'm going to give you as an objective point of view as I can, but this is the circumstantial evidence. And we need a whole bunch of people because somebody's got the key somewhere, But now that circumstantial stuff, and its legs are even more rickety than they've ever been, right, is now advising the powers that be.
Yeah. And what's so ironic is that, I feel like the only people really in a position to really suss out and explain the bigger picture of what's going on are that old guard conspiracy theorists who are still left. They seem like they're the last ones left who can really explain what's going on.
Right. And they're kind of disappearing. And
they're being discredited along with because there's all this other garbage.
Yeah.
Right. It's true. But even some of them are being co-opted. And again, we saw this years ago. This is not something that started in 2016 when Jesse Ventura, right, who was held up as the new breed of conspiracy talk show host guy, right?
Yeah.
When he went to RT, that told you he moves down to Mexico because he's afraid of being in the U.S. and then he goes to RT. What message does that sound?
Yeah, I never even really thought about Ventura, but he was one of the ones early on, and I really supported him.
He was really active in 9/11 Truth, wasn't he?
Yeah, very much so.
He was.
But he really was one of the ones early on that, and he had, I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe he just decided that he just was not going to be the guy. I don't know, but it seemed like it all kind of defaulted to Trump, and Trump started everything with the conspiracy theory. Started even before he ran for president with the birther movement. I mean, that's how it started.
For Trump, yeah. Well, it even started earlier than that. It started with the kids in Central Park 5.
Yeah, Central Park 5. Yeah, but a lot of the conspiracy stuff, though, a lot of that came from Roger Stone at first. Stone was huge in the JFK assassination.
And you know what I saw? You know what I saw just the other day? I go on the Facebook machine, which I dread, but I go on the Facebook but it's the way people are trying to contact me and stuff. But I go on the Facebook machine, and there's Roger Stone. You know, some evangelical preacher is advertising that Roger Stone's going to come to the church and do a big presentation on
Olaf, it's right down.
Like,
it's like 3 miles from where I'm at right now. That's where he's going to be at the end of this month. Incidentally,
like,
that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I'm like, is this bullshit? I mean, is this bullshit? No, it's real.
It's real.
Like, and what's funny is that on the guy on the church's Facebook, it's just meme after meme after meme after meme of WTF, what the hell, you know, you're insane. This is like 3,000 of your nuts, you know. But this is where we are. Roger Stone, convicted felon, is going to talk about his conversion to Christianity, apparently.
I know the church that you're talking about. I've driven past it for a long, long time. I think I know some people that have actually go to that church. The pastor, I say that word lightly, is very vocal lately, especially about having to wear masks into places. He did a rant.
Is that guy with the rant?
Oh,
no.
Yeah. He did a rant not too long ago because they made him wear a mask in Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, Herman Cain did a rant about having to wear a mask. He went to a Trump rally, and now he's dead.
Right.
Of COVID-19.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there's I'll tell you one thing though that I noticed. There's a weird thing about this whole thing, right? And I think you have to see them separately. Is that on one hand you've got all the people, you know, this new QAnon thing and all these old guys, you know, that are like Roger Stone is not young. But all these old guys, Herman Cain, Roger Stone, Trump, and all the rest of them, they were perpetuating this, don't wear a mask, masks are evil, don't wear a mask, COVID-19 is a crisis, you know, it's Alex Jones who are like crisis actors and, you know, whatever. But the people that die from it, the vast majority of the people that die from it are older people. That is true. That's not a conspiracy. That's true.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are the ones that buy into this. You know, one of the Koch brothers died. I think the Koch brothers were combined together to create the Antichrist. But one of the Koch brothers died of COVID-19.
I wasn't aware it was COVID-19.
Yeah, I believe it was COVID-19. And I know for a fact that in Florida, that a lot of these people that are older that are dying of COVID-19, they're going in and saying, well, we think that COVID-19 test was a false positive, so we're just going to call it community-acquired pneumonia. Because they want to keep the numbers down. Yeah.
Yeah, the states are cooking the books.
Right. And any time that there's it's new. It's a new disease. Like just go ahead.
They're killing their own followers.
Yeah.
Like if you go to that thing with Roger Stone and you don't wear a mask, and some dude most likely has COVID and is a passive carrier, which it appears to be what's going on. And a bunch of people are going to get infected in that thing, maybe even Roger Stone himself, and they're going to succumb to COVID-19. The net result is a decrease in the number of people that support QAnon and that kind of right-wing dialogue. So it's very weird.
It's counterproductive.
It is counterproductive.
Yeah.
That it is. I don't know. I think that the Trump and the alt-right, I think, are pushing this no mask thing because I think that they're thinking that if they can convince the country that we've returned to normality, that they can win. And I think that that's why the push to open everything and whatever, you know, this push is to create this false sense of normality. And then Trump can use his tired rhetoric and
just buying just enough time.
Hate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's failing though. I mean, it's failing fast.
He knows it. That's why he's after mail-in ballots. He's after mail-in ballots, but he's used the mail-in ballot like the last 8 times he's voted.
Right.
It's comical.
And so now they want to gut the post office just to try to prevent it if you can't legally prevent it.
Right, and not only that, he then, well, the first thing he did is said, well, maybe we need to push back the election, and that was met with a resounding no. And so then it was like, well, let's attack the underpinnings of how we could do this safely. You can see the desperation in those acts.
Yeah.
But I think the no mask thing is, he doesn't care what the body count is as long as he gets reelected. And but it is counterproductive because the people that are buying into it are his followers.
Well, being a conspiracy theorist, like I said, is the really puts you in a good position to try to understand what is actually going on the meta level and how conspiracy theory is being manipulated in a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's totally meta.
Ultimate irony.
It is conspiracy theory. We've institutionalized conspiracy theory, but in doing that, we've co-opted conspiracy theory, and now we have a selected class of approved conspiracy theorists that work at Fox News and Alex Jones and so on, that are approved to feed us conspiracies, and the rest of us are just kind of out to lunch. But it shows you why I went to ground. I mean, who wants to do conspiracy? It's utterly meta. The whole thing is meta.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other point that I wanted to make too was just like, with all this what is going on in Portland and what has been going on even with like Trump talking about the election, where are the militia groups and all these people that would talk about the overreach of government? Where are those people? Like when their guy does it, it's okay. It makes you just like really wonder.
Cognitive dissonance.
I think that what you're seeing is that at some level, it is kind of well, when their guy does it, it's okay. But I think a lot of those guys in the militia groups, they still exist, and I think what they're doing is that they're sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
Right.
Because look, if you look at what happened, right? Here's Trump. He puts these guys on the Supreme Court, like Kavanaugh and the other guy, Gorsuch. And he puts these guys on the Supreme Court, and he says to his base, he says, look, I put these ultra-conservatives on the Supreme Court. Now we're going to get the agenda that we, the people, want. Right? The problem is that, so on this one in particular, thing where it has to do with taxes and other things having to do with Oklahoma, right? And the output of the Supreme Court rule, the state of Oklahoma is owned by the First Nations people, Native Americans, because of a treaty that was ratified and never unratified. The U.S. government just chose to ignore the treaty. And what happened was that you put these guys on the Supreme Court that are pure constitutionalists, and they read the Constitution very literally, and they took a very literal approach to that, to that compact that was signed, way back when with the First Nations people, and we never undid the compact. So most of Oklahoma apparently is owned by the Native Americans in that area. And suddenly, the alt-right was crazy. What do you mean, It's like, well, you... And they took a literal approach. So I think a lot of these guys are waiting. Because they take a very, however you feel about it, good or bad, I think it's going to end bad, but they take a literal approach to the Constitution. And when the Constitution literally starts getting broken, which is what we're on the verge of, then they're going to become unleashed.
Yep.
Yeah, I think they feel like they're being deputized for something that's coming.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they feel like they're being deputized when they're watching it happen, and I think a lot of them have heard some of these ideas, and I think a lot of them are just sitting back watching going, wait a minute, because they are very literal interpreters of the Constitution, and you know what? That's fine. It's our founding document. If you want to take it quite literally, you can make a case for that. I think it's a living document. I think it changes over time. It can be reinterpreted. That's why we have the Supreme Court. But if you want to take a literal, there's an argument for that too. Let's have a discussion. But I think a lot, because you see a lot of those militia trips have gone to ground. You don't hear them talking. You don't see them doing anything. You see kind of
and real recently, I'm definitely not a supporter of this man, but one of the Bundy guys recently came out in support of Black Lives Matter, and I was like, well, you know, if you are a libertarian, self-avowed libertarian, then how could you not be against the state, you know, overreaching its power and, you know, totally dominating whole communities in a police state fashion? I mean, it's, you know, there might be some little pockets of hope somewhere, you know?
Yeah, there's a consistency in that.
And I know a guy who's a very diehard libertarian. And because of his libertarian beliefs, he was a Trump supporter. And over time, I think he is still barely, but when he sits down and really thinks about it, he stops because he starts to see everything that the Trump administration did for corporations. And one of the things that he is as a libertarian is anti-corporate, you know, corporatization.
Yeah. Anti-monopoly.
Which is very much a libertarian point of view. If you don't want the monopoly of the corporation or the monopoly of the state, every person has the right to create their own, you know, own garden of goodness. But you know, he will fully admit to you that the Trump administration, amongst others, have done incredible things to further the interests of the corporation, and they've corporatized so much. I mean, this idea that, you know, we have a national health service, but they can't seem to arrange for anybody to get tests. You know, their big statement was, well, you can go to LabQuest and get a COVID test. And it's like, why do I pay taxes?
Absolutely.
You know, right. So
we can have all these foreign entanglements and trillions of dollars every year for all this other stuff, but we can't put some resources together to combat this.
We spend more money on ammunition in Afghanistan in 6 months than we take to test every man, woman, and child in the United States.
It's crazy.
Well,
it's crazy, but again, you know, you wanted to talk conspiracies. It's like it's one of those things where we're living in a time where the conspiracy theory has become real.
Yes, that's exactly what I've been saying. Yeah, I've been you're right. You're so right. That's the thing, though. But what's ironic about it is, like, now is the time, like, all this stuff that is happening, but yet people are in denial that anything, like the people that say they're conspiracy theorists, are in denial anything's happening. It's just weird.
It's backwards. And I would argue to you that the proper position of the conspiracy theorist is as the provocateur.
Yeah.
The conspiracy theorist is the person out on the edge of finding this information, turning around and saying, okay, something is wrong. We need to take this further. And then somewhere, you know, it's picked up by the fourth estate, the journalists, they push it to say, oh, we really are trafficking drugs into South Central LA. And then the politicians, the people become enraged, and then that activates the politicians, and then they put laws in place to prevent it. But the day the conspiracy theorist becomes the political advisor is a dangerous one.
Yeah.
Whether you're to the right or you're to the left or you're down the middle. The day the conspiracy theorist is the political advisor, we have a problem.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to stop, Olaf. Can you tell people where they can see your writings, where Paranoia Mag is, where they can get the Secret Cipher, the UFOnauts?
Sure. So you can get the complete Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts on Amazon. Just search for Complete Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts or Alan Greenfield. My book that I wrote eons ago, the Secret Space Age and the Cold War in Space, are both on Amazon. Paranoia Magazine's on Amazon. When we print issues erratically at the moment. You can go to paranoiamagazine.com. I haven't updated it in a little bit. As I explained, did a bit of going to ground and looking at other stuff to try to let the foot blow over. But you can listen to our podcast, our no award-winning amateur hour podcast, the Paranoia podcast, which is
That's really good. I'm a fan.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a new one coming out. I'm editing it. But yeah, pretty much paranoiamagazine.com, or you can find me on Facebook. I'm easy to find.
Cool. And you do a lot of cooking too. I've been seeing a lot of your cooking and baking recently. Making a lot of really delectable desserts.
I do. I'm the paranoid baker.
Yeah.
I made churros today.
Hell yeah. Sounds great.
Yeah, I saw that.
One of these days, I was talking to Ron, and one of these days I want to do Paranoia Con, and I want to do it radically different than any other conspiracy convention ever. Basically, I'm going to find a reasonably priced place, and they can see, 100 people or 200 people. I think I found one that's a little bit out in the boonies, but I think people would go. And basically, you pay $20. You get Costco pizza, and I'll make a bunch of pies. And, some whacked out conspiracy theorists will donate their time, and we can just have a powwow. Because what I really want to do is have a conspiracy powwow.
Sounds awesome.
There'll be pies involved. That's pies, my favorite.
Maybe in the post-COVID world, we'll make it happen.
Yes, sir.
I think we should. But I've only spoken at one conspiracy convention in my entire life. I spoke at the Secret Space Conference. But I decided that if I ever speak in another one, that they have these like rooms where the speakers are supposed to sit around and wait. And I figured, I'll make a couple pies and bring them along.
For the green room.
For the green room.
Cool. Well, maybe that can be our Strange Realities 2021 when it comes back to real life next year. So you'll have to come to Nashville.
Yeah.
I've never been to Nashville.
No, we need to make that. We need to make that happen. I mean, the Russians have the vaccine now, so the Sputnik 5.
Yeah, and like 17 billion, and they have like 17 billion doses ready right now. It's probably made of hydrochloroquine.
I don't know what game they're playing, but okay, that was an interesting announcement.
I don't want to restart your podcast for you, but they're playing the game that they play, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's a great card game. It's called bullshit.
Very much so. Very much so.
All right.
Well, thank you, Olaf. We're gonna stay on the line for us. We're gonna close down. We're gonna close this section out, and guys, we'll be back to close down the show with some information on the Strange Realities Conference on Conspirinormal. Alright guys, welcome back to Conspirinormal. Very briefly, we just want to do some housekeeping items about the Strange Realities Conference.
And just had that epic conversation with Olav Phillips.
Yes, we did. And we continued actually on Patreon about maybe another, 35 minutes, I think? Where we talked about the secret space program and mind control and how video games are being used to make super soldiers. It was a really interesting discussion. So you guys go and check that out on Patreon. You can join Conspirinormal. Patreon.com/Conspirinormal. It's $1 to get in. And also right now, all the presentations from 2019 Strange Realities are on there. So we want to make an announcement that on August 29th, that's coming up on this coming Saturday from the day that we're posting this, we are going to be streaming, and there's probably going to be some interludes with myself and with Serfiel. I would say we'll probably do that, you would think?
Yeah. We're gonna hang out the whole time, and we'll do some little interludes and maybe have some guests on. We'll see what happens, but That's just going to be in between playing all the presentations from last year.
Yeah. So check that out. That's going to actually be on the Conspirinormal Facebook page. I don't know if I can do it with both on the Conspirinormal on the YouTube channel, but so go like the Facebook page. The best. That's going to be the best way to see it. We're going to be streaming from there. I'll have to figure out the YouTube thing as well. So maybe, but I'm not, but definitely on this Conspirinormal Facebook page. So that's going to be on August 29th. And I think that's it, guys. Again, StrangeRealitiesConference.com, $20 to go. You guys got 21 speakers, 20 presentations. That's $1 per presentation, spread over 3 days, September 25th, 26th, and 27th. We got several people that you guys, everyone that's been on that, everybody that's part of that has been on this show. And these are exclusive presentations for you guys. So hit us up, $20. One note about that, if that is going to be streaming to a private Facebook page. And when you sign up for the ticket, you should have gotten a link that takes you to that Facebook page. Now, if you have Facebook, that's no problem. You're just going to ask to get into the group. If you have a different name than what you used to buy the ticket, that you need to message myself, or Serfiel that's on there as well. And make sure you message us and let us know the name that you put on the ticket. Now, if you don't have a Facebook page, make one. You can use it just to watch the conference and then do whatever you want with it. So that's very important, guys, that you do that. I've already got about half the people, I believe, that have bought a ticket, which may be more by the time we actually post this up. But that's important to get in to watch the conference on that weekend. So is there anything that you want to add to that, Sergio?
No, just we really look forward to streaming last year's for everyone who couldn't make it. It's going to be really awesome to see that and kind of get you all familiar with the type of material that will be at the 2020 conference.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We will be back next time. We're going to talk about some more interesting stuff, material on Conspirinormal.
If you would like to help the show, please consider becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/Conspirinormal or leave a one-time donation at Conspirinormal.com. And please check out our YouTube channel, Conspirinormal Podcast.